First of all, I would just like to welcome all of today's meeting attendees to this virtual Employers Growing Talent Through Apprenticeship meeting. This actually marks about the fourth in a series of meetings that we've been able to coordinate and conduct in partnership with Office of Skills Development and our DOL Office of Apprenticeship and ACDS being involved as well. So this actually dates back to November of 2018 when we were able to do some face-to-face meetings prior to pre-COVID. So we're very fortunate to be able to utilize the technology and glad that all of you are joining us today. We have a lot of information in our agenda today. We want to be efficient in how we utilize that. There's a lot of information we want to share about registered apprenticeship. We will be led by some subject matter experts, and our panelist is really the bulk of our session here. But again, we're pleased that you're with us, and there's a lot of information to share. We want it to be interactive. At the end of our meeting, you'll have a chance for Q&A, so please take advantage of that through the chat or verbally. We'll welcome that as well. Before I kind of hand it off to our next presenter, I want to remind some of you, and then it may be new information for others, that the Arkansas Division of Workforce Services was fortunate to receive 2 federal grant awards from the Department of Labor that is geared towards registered apprenticeship expansion in the state. And when I talk about expansion, and we're going to get more into this as the meeting progresses, but that includes, all industry sectors and many, many occupations. So we are making a lot of headway in the state with making those connections and serving employers and providing good career paths for job seekers. And we're going to be talking more about that today. The 2 active grants that we have, some of you may have heard the names before, but it's Arkansas Apprenticeship Pathways Initiative. It has a current expiration date the fall of this year, September 30. The other one is Arkansas Expands Apprenticeship with an ending date of October 31st. However, I will tell you that we have the potential of getting some extensions, 6-month extension for both of these grants. So that's pending approval through the Department of Labor. So I wanted to just kind of preface our meeting by saying there is some federal funding available to assist, and certainly as we go through the meeting, there will be others that will share assistance that's being provided at the state level. One of the takeaways that I would like for you to have from today's meeting is we really have a collaborative partnership in the state of Arkansas. And, this includes our partners with the Office of Skills Development and the State Office of Apprenticeship, as well as our new incoming director for USDOL Office of Apprenticeship, Mr. Randy Prather, who you'll be hearing from in a bit. So with that, Cody, if you're on the line, I'll hand it off to you for your comments.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. A lot of effort goes into putting these forums on, whether it's in person or virtually. So appreciate the staff and the work at DWS, OSD, ACDS, Boost, the whole group for putting this thing together. Really appreciate it. Again, my name is Cody Waits. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the director for the Office of Skills Development at the Arkansas Department of Commerce. Within the Office of Skills Development, I'm going to talk through this organizational chart that you see in front of you here, is the State Apprenticeship Office. And the State Apprenticeship Office has been around for quite a while. It became part of the Office of Skills Development back in 2015, and for a number of years had been tasked with managing, providing oversight of state funding dedicated to registered apprenticeship activity in the state. A lot of which and a large amount of it was heavily focused on the construction trades industry. And I think, as we all know, and that we've witnessed over the last few years, and a lot of this work has been by our colleagues at DWS, is we've seen a lot of expansion into registered apprenticeship. And if you look to the right side of this organizational chart, I think you see that in terms of some of the industries that we have represented there. You know, we've seen a lot of growth since 2015 when OSD was created. You know, if you think back and look at what registered apprenticeship was back then, there was about 82 programs. Today we have over 140 programs. You had about 3,200 apprentices. Today you have close to 6,600 apprentices. You have, roughly, I think the number's 800 employers who are actively engaged in apprenticeship. And so there's a lot of movement and a lot of eyes on apprenticeship as a workforce development solution. And although a lot of companies are interested in it, whether you're a manufacturer, you're in the construction industry, healthcare, financial services, IT, aerospace, energy, you're all looking for workforce development solutions, and apprenticeship is one that is employer driven, and that's the beauty of it. But if you go back to just this last legislative session in 2019, Senator Jane English sponsored a bill. It was Act 1079 that essentially made the Office of Skills Development the comprehensive apprenticeship office for the state of Arkansas. And so kind of what does that mean, right? And so, what that meant to us was, in the past we had this kind of not necessarily confusion, but, who do we go to for the federal funds for DOL registered apprenticeships? And well, there's state funding for registered apprenticeships, and you didn't really have that one point of contact to go to. And so that's similar to what we're working on now is bringing the offices that have been working on registered apprenticeship together in one entity, right? And within the Office of Skills Development, the State Apprenticeship Office. And so what you see in front of you are what we believe are some of the key stakeholders and the positions that we are looking to bring on to this team so that we have a one-stop shop for all registered apprenticeship activity in the future, whether that's funds that are discretionary grants from the Department of Labor that are currently being managed by ADWS, or state funds that are being managed by the State Apprenticeship within OSD. So having one point of contact, one single location in the future is going to be key. And I know Mark and David and DOS and DWS are supportive of this move. We're still working that piece out because of the fact that some of these grants are overlapping. As Mark mentioned, there may be some actions going on the grants that are currently available, and that's fine. We'll still be working with them. But if you look at this, you have the Arkansas Apprenticeship Coordinating Steering Committee, which is a governor-appointed committee that reports or kind of has oversight of state funds for apprenticeship and has a tie to the State Apprenticeship Office in OSD. We have the tie with the local workforce boards, and part of my commitment to ensuring that we, as this transition takes place, that we engage the local boards, build a rapport, build a partnership so that we can continue operations as you have with DWS, as OSD starts to take over and manage these federal funds for apprenticeship. As Mark said, I think Mark may have mentioned, we actually applied for 2 Department of Labor registered apprenticeship grants in the month of May. Neither of which we have actually been notified of whether we were awarded that grant or not awarded that grant. So we're still waiting to hear that back from that. But should we be awarded those fundings, we actually have set aside funds for local workforce boards to bring proposals to us in hopes of expanding registered apprenticeship. You can see the connection with the Department of Labor and Mr. Randy Prather, who is the former director for the State Office of Apprenticeship. And I know Randy's speaking, I believe, right after me, so I won't steal any of his thunder. But you also see the creation of industry intermediaries. And I know I'm probably running up on a little bit of time here, but I think it's important to take the time to talk through some of this in entities like an Arkansas Center for Data Sciences, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, if not everyone. If not, you're going to hear from them probably today, but they act as that industry intermediary that really connects apprenticeship to companies with talent pool, with project management for IT occupations and apprenticeships in that sector. And we look to mirror that within some of these other sectors that are over here. So, OSD, we're pretty comfortable with advanced manufacturing and construction. We do that really well. But when you start to think about energy, right, the energy sector, who could be that industry intermediary that has the connection with those employers and those entities that can do the work and do that project management? A lot of acronyms on here, right? But the Arkansas Energy Workforce Consortium is what that stands for. Same thing with aerospace. How do we find that industry intermediary? There's a Arkansas Aerospace and Defense Alliance. So those groups and those entities such as that can act as those middlemen, if you will, between employers, talent pools, talent acquisition, and within this Office of Apprenticeship, so that we have the ability to work as a cohesive team and really partner in multiple sectors across the state. I would like to introduce my Director of Apprenticeship, Dr. Don Hamby, who oversees the State Office of Apprenticeship. And underneath Dr. Hamby, you have Rocky Mantooth, who's been in our office for a number of years. You have Janice Robinson, who does the fiscal support for the State Office of Apprenticeship. You have Mr. Ron Baker, who formerly worked within State Office of Apprenticeship, who's been at the Department of Labor, but will be coming over starting June 14th to work in the Office of Apprenticeship. But then we also have 2 additional positions that we're going to be bringing on board. And my hope is obviously, and I'll say it out loud, that we can leverage some of the skill sets that of our partners at DWS we've been working with to bring them into OSD as partners and use their expertise and knowledge so that there's that seamless transition of not only understanding and workings of how federal grants work from the Department of Labor and working with the local boards, but their knowledge and their expertise in those areas as well. So there's been a lot of change going on in apprenticeship, a lot of great things happening. But I want to take the time to just kind of put in front of you today somewhat of an organizational structure and how we're aligning things within the state for a registered apprenticeship. And with that, I guess I can either turn that back over to Mark or to Randy. I don't know how you guys want to handle that.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. Appreciate those comments. That's very helpful information for everyone to hear, kind of the alignment of the Office of Skills Development and the State Apprenticeship Office moving forward. So next on our agenda, Mr. Randy Prather. Randy is known by many of you, I'm sure, from all of his work in the state, but he's in a new role now with the USDOL Office of Apprenticeships. So, Randy?
Well, thank you, Mark, and welcome everybody. And Mark, thank you for inviting me to the conference. Cody, it's good to see your face again, and looking forward to working with y'all. And but first of all, some of you know me out there. A lot of you don't. I spent 28 years in the Air Force. I'm gonna give you a little background myself. 28 years in the Air Force, and I come to work for the Department of Career Education. For 9 years, I was a Skills USA State Director. Then I moved over to the State Approving Agency for Veterans Education. And that's where I got introduced to apprenticeship. That was the veterans using their GI Bill benefits for registered apprenticeship. Then I was in the State Apprenticeship Office for 7 years as the State Director there and working with Rocky, and Cody was my boss at that time. Then I retired last August and found out retirement wasn't for me. So this job with the United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship came open. I put my name in the hat and here I am. But I'm looking real forward to working with Cody's office, OSD, the State Apprenticeship Office, all the partners with apprenticeship here in the state of Arkansas, and expanding apprenticeship and even making it better. So I know with the direction that Cody has got with his staff, it can't get, it'll get better. Believe me, it really will. But kind of give you some figures. Since January of 17, across the nation, we have signed on 710,000 new apprentices since 1 January 17. There's over 1,400 registered apprenticeship occupations across the nation. What's good for employers, for what I see is from the apprentices who complete their apprenticeship process, a 94% retention rate. Now, I don't, for you employers, that's got to be a big plus. Not only to train your folks, but to keep your people. And what a great thing that is. Once they complete their registered apprenticeship process, they'll receive a certificate that is industry recognized across the nation. Here in Arkansas, like Cody said earlier, we got approximately 6,600 apprentices, 638 employers across the state participate in apprenticeship, representing 51 different occupations. One of the websites, and it'll come up on the screen later, is apprenticeship.com. New updates to apprenticeship, you can find that on that apprenticeship.com. Anyone interested in starting an apprenticeship program can go to apprenticeship.com. They got a standards builder. I mean, from A to Z, how to get your standards written and approved. I'm always here to help, and my contact information will be on a slide toward the end of this presentation. If you have any questions, just save them for later. If not, you can contact me at the information later on. But thank you again, Mark.
Thank you, Randy, and welcome to your new role. You're certainly going to be an asset in your new role, assisting with registered apprenticeship efforts across the state. So thank you. We're kind of moving now into what I'd call some real meat of our agenda, I guess. We're fortunate to have a distinguished panel representing employers with experiences in registered apprenticeship. It's always good to learn from folks that are actually utilizing what they're talking about. We also have a training provider and sharing their experiences in what they're doing with registered apprenticeship, as well as a representative from one of our local workforce development areas who's been very active with registered apprenticeship expansion efforts in their region. And I'd kind of like to set the stage by just sort of describing a little bit about our moderator today, Mr. Lonnie Embert. Lonnie's going to help facilitate or lead our discussion with the panelists. And Lonnie currently serves a dual role as the apprenticeship director of the Arkansas Center for Data Sciences and an apprenticeship consultant with the Office of Skills Development. And over the last several years, Lonnie has had the opportunity to work with several states in their expansion efforts around registered apprenticeship. And I've been fortunate to work with Lonnie over the last 3+ years and have grown to appreciate his expertise and knowledge in the field. And we're fortunate to have him now here in Arkansas to assist with our efforts. And with that, Lonnie, I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce our panelists, or however you'd like to proceed.
Well, thanks, Mark. I think I know most of you from the local workforce boards that are on this call, and you've all brought potentially some employers to this call as well. And I don't know who you are necessarily, but just know that this session is designed for both parties. We've been doing this, as Mark said, a few times around the state, but I think the maturity that I see as I've now come to Arkansas from South Carolina is that we are readying for kind of this collaborative ecosystem to really take hold. And I think Cody, Mark, Randy, everybody kind of stressed that we're at a really critical crossroads. And so what I hope you take home today is two things. One, that you have a better understanding of what it means to think about registered apprenticeship as a business strategy. We're not really out here to tell you about some flavor of the month program. We do believe that having some funding set aside through the federal grants, through the state money, and oh, by the way, Cody, we did receive a $2 million Closing the Skills Gap grant fairly recently called Titan, and that was through the Division of Higher Education working with ACDS and then OSD as well. And so know that exists for those of you out here. But I want to set the stage for our panel discussion by covering this one slide that some of you may have seen before, but it really does, and there's that slide. I hope everybody's not seeing that. There's something popping up on the screen there. Maybe Angela, you can get that. But there's 4 components to a successful registered apprenticeship implementation. And, you know, usually you think about left to right, you know, things, but I'd like you to start with the idea that an apprenticeship is only an apprenticeship because an employer is going to hire someone. There's a difference between internships and apprenticeships. Apprenticeships are work employer driven, whereas, you know, internships and other types of workforce discussions and programs are very educator driven, and rightfully so. We believe that education and training, you know, go hand in hand. But in this case, you know, knowing the occupations, the demand in terms of employers across all sectors and really all occupations, Randy and Cody both kind of emphasized that this state has a lot of strength relative to trades and construction, our history around successful apprenticeships. But in the more recent past, this idea of expanding into non-traditional sectors and occupations, whether that be advanced manufacturing and healthcare and IT and all the other ones that Cody showed you, that we're looking at having intermediaries to represent those employer bases. I just want the locals and the business services reps to know that one of the key aspects of this is how do we communicate and how do we engage those employers and do it together. Because in a session like today, where we're kind of in mass sharing this knowledge and capability around the value of an apprenticeship and hearing from panelists, the real goal of today is we would ask every employer to consider taking the next step. And that next step is really doing a more deep dive, one-on-one kind of session within each company, where a representative from the local board, a representative from OSD, a representative from the intermediary, whoever that may be, and maybe it's ACDS in the case of IT, just bear with me for a minute, but that's the next step of today, is to get a little closer look at to whether or not what your occupations that are in demand, how this program implementation could help you to solve some of the problems of finding talent, developing the talent, and then the third piece is retaining that talent, right? And having them find a pathway to a long career with your company. So it starts with this expected outcomes on the part of the employers, because that's what drives a successful apprenticeship. But then you have to focus on, where is this talent going to come from? And so part of our panel discussion will be hearing from our wonderful panelists about what was their problems of why they couldn't find talent. Where were they looking? What was traditional? What are we doing differently? And so the audience is this combination of who you as local workforce board and you as employers are constantly saying, you know, where is this supply chain? Where are we going to find the talent, whether that be underserved populations in IT? I know we talk a lot about minorities and women. It could be that we're finding homes for veterans, for previously incarcerated, you know, for those that have been dislocated, or especially recently with COVID, you know, this idea of a larger unemployed population. Well, apprenticeship is that solution where somebody who might have otherwise felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not qualified for that job. I see it posted, and they feel as though there's no hope. Whereas with apprenticeship being this combination, and I know some of you can see me, you can't with the slide on the screen, but just know that I'm representing the fact that this combination of, we know the classroom education that somebody needs to be aware of so that they can become successful as an industrial maintenance tech, or in IT, they can become a software developer, or in some cases become a really good interpreter, as you'll hear later. There's so many things that classroom is a piece of it. But what apprenticeship, and I want the employers here to recognize, is that this is probably already happening in your company, and that is that it's a combined, yeah, I have some knowledge, but I need the applied side. I need the OJT. I need a mentor or a master to show me how I apply what I've learned at this company, whatever that company is. And I know we've got some representation here from, you know, Latrobe, and we've got some folks at the Oak Lawn, and we've got others in various industry sectors that you may not have been thinking, well, apprenticeship is going to work in my organization. But I want you to believe that every job is potentially apprenticeable. And that's because of the two middle pieces. And that is the flexibility around finding the content that somebody needs to be trained and educated on, the skills they need to build, and then how we flexibly deliver that, how we work in conjunction with a training provider as well as with the employer to make sure that it fits the schedule. You know, I'm not reading these pieces of the slide, but just know that it's a combination of customization of the material, the content, the delivery, and the schedule. And then bottom line to all this is there any known funding? How do we try to offset the cost on the part of an employer to not have to cover the training costs, because you're the ones paying the wage of this new apprentice? And we'll cover some of those things about salary and wage, and what are the 5, you know, kind of requirements of a registered apprenticeship. And I'll make that be the last thing I'm going to say before we're going to pop up our slide that says who our panel participants are today. But here's the things, and it's pretty minimal if you think about it, right? Is that an apprentice has got to be engaged in a minimum of 144 classroom hours. The apprenticeship needs to be a minimum of 1 year in length. Now, many of them we're going to talk about have been traditionally very time-based and very licensure-oriented, and that could be up to 4 years in length. But we also have what's called hybrid and competency-based apprenticeships that can shorten the length of time for that apprenticeship. Then there has to be at least one wage increase for that candidate. The idea is if they've gained skills and they're demonstrating their capability, that they would receive a wage increase, even though as an apprentice they may have started at something less than what would have been a normal entry-level salary. And they show and demonstrate their capability, and it builds a career path for them. And then just know that at the end of this, every apprentice receives a national credential, a DOL, registered apprenticeship credential, that represents a portable certificate that says, if I've been an apprentice in this particular field or occupation, that if I move and go somewhere else, another employer can look at that and say, I understand what that means. I understand that that has that portability, and that I can trust that that candidate is going to be capable to do what I need them to do. So with that, again, I didn't cover all this. Just know that those 4 components come together to basically bring supply and demand in the shortest amount of time for you employers. We can wait for the long tail of education and 4-year degrees or other programs which have been successful for you. But in the short term, just know that we can find a population and be able to bring them in, have them be trained, have them become very productive very quickly, and then they stay. And you like the loyalty and the long-term mention of that. So now here's, if you will, Angela, put up our slide of our panel presenters. So here's who we have with us today. And then if you can, Angela, after I introduce all of them, they're gonna each come on and say a few words about themselves, the role that they play, and so forth with their companies. And then we'll begin kind of a Q&A process that I want to emphasize again for everybody on the call, that as we're going through this and you're hearing from the panelists, as questions evolve, please put them into the chat. We'll field those from the chat, and then we'll convey those on to the panelists, either because you specified a particular panelist, or I'll just appropriately assign them to them. So today with us is one of your fellow locals from the Local Workforce Board in Northwest Arkansas. We have Patti Mcmahon, and we are really pleased to have Patti on this panel because of her experience and a broad ability to cover a lot of our topics in working with employers. We have Ileana Sutton, who is the CEO of AHA Interpreting Solutions. Quite a story. On our last Jonesboro Employer Forum, she was on the panel, and it was just prior to the implementation of registered apprenticeship for her. But now she's an expert. Now she's had multiple apprentices go through her program, and she'll share with us. We have Natalie Xu, who is probably the epitome of having an employer representative that can be a champion, that can organize appropriately for those next steps of having the right meetings with the right leadership and the right people in the room. And we'll talk more about that. But Natalie's on board and getting Hytrol involved in a number of registered apprenticeship programs. We have Carl Harris, who's been one of the leaders in the Conway location for DXC Technologies. He's one of the delivery managers, but he basically has engineered their registered apprenticeship program. They're working with the Arkansas Center for Data Sciences. And then finally, our most experienced panel member, Brian Mckinney, with Multi-Craft Contractors, and going to speak to the multitude of benefits and success stories that go along with our construction trades. And both from his role as a training school and now as an employer, he's going to give us some really good insights that I think will benefit all of us as well. So with that, we're going to start first, and actually we're going to go in reverse order if it's okay. So for my panelists, as we take the screen off here, Angela, we're going to go Brian first, then Carl, then Natalie, then Ileana, and then Patti. We want to close in this opening with our Local Workforce Board person. So Brian, go ahead first, introduce yourself.
All right, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, it's good to be here. Thank you so much, Lonnie. My name is Brian Mckinney. I work for Multi-Craft Contractors. In a nutshell, I am a 20-year veteran. I'm a learning and development director here for Multi-Craft. I've been here with the company for 3 years now, and 3 years here in your guys' beautiful state of Arkansas. I love it, and I'm coming from way of Virginia Beach. So just know I left the beach to come to your beautiful state. So, but I definitely love it here. As far as Multi-Craft is concerned, we are construction, industrial construction, but a little bit more than just that. I know that's kind of the umbrella that we have, but realistically, what we do and what we're after is first and foremost the employee, our customers, and the community. And we bring to the table automation and robotics, service division, construction, industrial services, engineering solutions, and concept to completion fabrication. So we're all about the trade expertise. It's an art to a lot of these guys, and one that we want to make sure that we maintain. So my role here with Multicraft is ensuring that all of our apprentices and all our education and training is created into a formal atmosphere. We partner with the local colleges that are here, from NWAC to NTI to ACE, the Arkansas College of Electricity, and to any of the surrounding vendors to support both our soft skill and our trade intensive skill curriculum, and in supporting their efforts of how we get, how we maintain that those expertise. So that's it.
Perfect, Brian. That's a great lead in. Thank you for that. Now, Carl, you'll be next.
Thank you. First of all, let me say thank you for allowing DXC and myself to be a part of this panel. So thank you a lot. I am a service delivery leader, and I have been at DXC as a site leader here in the RDC, Regional Delivery Center in the Conway, Arkansas area. Our focus is really to supply all the resources to all the different accounts. Now, of course, we're the market leader. We're in the healthcare industry, and we take care of managing all of the Medicaid solutions for different states across the country. So if you're in Mississippi, you're in Texas, whatever, you may have a team there locally, but they use the regional delivery centers to supply and augment their team with more resources here. My focus is technical leaders. I am a technical developer. I'm looking for developers that see Unix kind of guys. We have all different roles here at DXC that we're looking to have an apprenticeship go out across outside of the C Unix environment. But to us, I mean, the key here is finding the right people, and sometimes that's a hard thing to do. So when you're in the technology field, sometimes your technology go behind a little bit. We're not coding in Java and all of that. We're looking for C Unix guys that's been around for the last 20 years. They're already in a job and they already have a place. So this apprenticeship is for us to be able to train and bring and grow those people so that they can stay a long term here at DXC with us. So that's what we're looking for. Our apprenticeship has been very successful. We had our first one, and we're looking for many more to come. Thank you.
Carl, thank you for that great lead in. And now we're going to turn it over to Natalie Xu.
Hey everyone, I'm Natalie Xu and I work for Hytrol Conveyor Company. We're located in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We're one of the largest conveyor manufacturers in this hemisphere. And my role at Hytrol is as really the academic partnerships manager and also directing all of the learning and development for internal employees, is to really develop and sustain new talent pools so that we can create a more robust workforce. We are aiming to be a $500 million company by 2030, so we really need to expand our talent pool at Hytrol. I'm also in charge of building external engagement programs to really boost our bottom line. That's part of my goals. And then thirdly, I'm here to grow internal education programs to develop our people's professional futures. So we have a lot of longevity here at Hytrol, people who are very committed to the company and the culture here. And part of even the apprenticeship program is to identify those employees who've been with us for a long time who maybe want to grow in their careers and move up. So we were very excited to talk with Lonnie about apprenticeship programs, and we were very new to this conversation, so I dove in headfirst, and Lonnie's really helped me identify how an apprenticeship model could help multiple career paths within our organization.
Thank you, Natalie. Ileana, are you with us? You're next.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me today. I'm actually in Rochester, Minnesota. I've been a native of Arkansas for about 24 years. I've been able to sit back and be part of the major growth in Northwest Arkansas in the area of our diversity and language and barrier needs and even education needs that a lot of our employers go through and really don't have a resource to be able to reach out when it comes to focusing on someone's business skill set, such as from business etiquette to communication And our area, of course, of expertise is interpreting. So we have been able to create this apprenticeship program where we really focus on the basic business skills and have added our flair of teaching the essentials for an interpreter, because we know no matter if you're hired as a bilingual interpreter, you're going to be asked to interpret. And so because we thrive on compliancy and are able to customize projects, we felt that it was our duty to make sure that our bilinguals were trained professionally to all of the legal standards out there to make it easier for any employer to be able to hire any bilingual in any field. So there's not a field that we necessarily can't cater. And so we are bringing great opportunity for free education, working with Patti and Mark's folks in Northwest Arkansas, and basically making the training and the apprenticeship basically free, and giving us basically a win-win situation on both ends.
That's powerful. That's powerful, Ileana. That's great. And now our final panelist to introduce themselves, Patti Mcmahon.
I'm Patti Mcmahon. I work for the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District, and I'm the Workforce Administrative Director. I'm one of 10 directors throughout the state, so there are 9 others like me. Anywhere you are in Arkansas, you have a workforce director. We cover the 9-county area in Northwest Arkansas, obviously. So workforce is, we're the subgrantee of federal funds for workforce innovation funds, and we cover adult, dislocated worker, and youth funds. Traditionally, those are the funds that we have through the state, through the Arkansas Division of Workforce Services. And we work with participants. People come to us looking for training or jobs, and we work with them to provide funding for their training or to help them find employment. So that's our main job. We also all have business services teams. So one of the things that we do as a workforce area is to work with our local employers to try to see what those skills are that you need, so that we're able to work with the employers, also with training providers and with participants to try to make sure that we're providing those services. So apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship is fairly new to us as an area, but we kind of dove in head first and have worked with Mark and Lonnie and have learned a lot throughout the process. And we find it to be a great asset to our participants and a great asset to all of our communities. So I'm excited to talk more specifically about kind of the things that we do to help make these grants work smoothly.
Patti, thank you. And so now as I set the stage for some of the questions that we're going to pose to our panelists, I would like to kind of re-engage the audience again a little bit to think about whether what you just heard from Patti is exactly what you do as one of the local workforce board directors or business services reps, and thinking about how we can jointly engage employers, much like you invited some today, or if you're the employer on the call today, seeing that we've got a panel that's pretty diverse, right? Pretty widespread in terms of the types of companies, the types of industry sectors. And so it's a combination of who are you thinking about that's in your general area that are the employers, and how could we together go out and introduce this concept of registered apprenticeship, and knowing that if we really get this magnification of what we're doing on a small scale broadly, Cody's talking about what his organizational structure and his concept is for how we can support that capacity, right? To support that expansion in a way that we're really ready for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this conversation based on Patti, because you have already just recently been working with a number of companies across sectors. This question is going to be for Ileana. So Ileana, I know you once were considering the fact that your particular occupation here was not something that was predominant in terms of apprenticeship before, but how did you identify, Ileana, with the fact that this could be the kind of special program to help you train and to be able to facilitate how many people need to be going into this interpreting world?
Well, Lonnie, I think my experience of being here in Northwest Arkansas for the last 24 years and the last 4 years being able to travel cross country and visit small rural areas where their population was highly diverse, and be able to listen to the needs and compare them to what our needs were, in the sense of listening to employers putting ads, from putting ads to for bilinguals, and not being able to have a big pool to hire from, and having to hire someone that they knew that needed training, to really listening to the community needs and their training was really what we based our decision on starting an apprenticeship program. So it was really based on the need of our community and from our clients to our actual workers.
Right. And your first cohort, you hired how many apprentices? 8? Or I don't know. How many did you hire?
When we first started week 5, there were a solid 5 that started with us.
Great. Okay. So now my next, you did that internally, right? And so that is a program that you are not the sponsor necessarily, but you are the employer. I want some of the employers and locals to understand another example of a larger company that ran an internal program. Carl, that would be you at DXC, but yet in your case, ACDS is the sponsor of the program, and you were the employer, and you hired how many in your first cohort?
We still have 15 that's still here with us working in our cohort. We started out with 21. Of course, the world is not a perfect world, right? But overall, the program has been very successful, and it comes down to technology, coding, and programming, because you got to integrate all of this talent inside of these accounts is already up and working. So it is a challenge, but we still have 15 here with us.
Yeah. Well, Carl, before I bring this up, just what were some of the things that you as an executive and your leadership team were interested in when you kind of were making your decision? Should we do this or not? How did the state help you? How did ACDS help you? Tell us about your decision process that would be similar to some employers on the call.
Well, from a business perspective, the most important thing is get your new hires up and running as fast as possible. I mean, that they add on to the bottom line. You begin to, really reap the benefits of having a talented person working in your staff. So we had a challenge with our onboarding process. So onboarding here at DXC can take months to do. You hire someone and it takes them a month to get access to this system, that system, coding, learning how to do this, learning our project management methodology. And so we wanted to find a way to shortcut that. And this program allowed us to do this. We were very flexible. We had 2 different organizations going at the same time. Some needed more training than others. Others needed a light amount of training. Therefore, they were already productive and assigned to an account and started working on that account. So it really helped us a lot in making sure that we can get a new employee integrated, affecting the bottom line as soon as we could.
And I want to go ahead and mention that the next question that I'm going to pose to Natalie, but based on what Carl said, they did a really good job of doing assessment, right? Kind of an initial, kind of a midterm, and actually a post, so pre and post assessments. And that really helped to know how to calibrate the training and the education. I know there's others around the state that are doing a similar type of assessment in other areas besides IT. They're doing it in industrial maintenance at ConAgra. There's others that have done similar types of assessment. Natalie, first question for you is, similar to Carl, what had been the decision process there at Hytrol? I know you've been very instrumental in making sure that everybody that need to chime in on the decision has been involved. Tell everybody a little bit about that process, and then talk a little bit about some of the occupations in demand at Hytrol.
Sure, Lonnie. So I did a lot of listening at the beginning when I came on, and just kind of paid attention to what some of our leaders were saying about workforce. And some of the biggest gaps we have, we are also sort of an engineering firm in addition to being a manufacturer. So we have a staff of over 140 engineers. And one of our mottos at High Troll is to grow your own. Some of our engineers are homegrown and they don't have engineering degrees. We do have a lot of highly degreed engineers on site as well. But one of the gaps that we kept identifying is this role of a CAD technician. And a CAD operator, CAD technician, we have a few on staff, but a lot of our engineers do CAD technician work. And so we began to identify that, you know, quite a few of our engineers, they grow tired of doing that work, right? They want to do something maybe a little bit more advanced, where they can use some of their skill sets to the company's advantage. But we were seeing that pipeline was a little stagnant, and then it was very difficult for us to source CAD technicians. So what we did is we began, actually, Lonnie, I don't remember how we first got in touch. You may have to refresh my memory on that. I think you were holding a local forum in Jonesboro and I missed it. And so we actually brought you out with Lisa to visit the facility. And through our discussions, I brought in some of our key stakeholders, our director of HR, who is very influential in this process as well, and then our director of engineering. And then eventually, after we had those preliminary conversations, we began to build this concept of we really need a training program for CAD technicians, because we even brought in our local technical college, ASU Newport here, and speaking with Jeff Bookout, who's over the workforce development on their end, we all identified really an opportunity for a curriculum and a pathway for CAD technicians, and really a demand for them in the area, not even just from our company, but from others as well. So that was where we started, and what I did to kind of push the process along, because as Lonnie experienced, you know, it took some time for people to sort of adopt the concept, because most people think of, you know, at least in manufacturing, sometimes we think of apprenticeships and like for electricians or plumbers, but we're not really so accustomed in this area to having apprenticeships in advanced manufacturing or manufacturing roles, or even engineering type roles. And so I started by just building a proposal. I used resources from Lonnie's team at ACDS, and then I combined that with some of the resources on apprenticeship.com, and I just created a proposal that I could route internally and get all of our stakeholders within the company on board, and just kind of get them familiar with what is an apprenticeship and how could it really change the game for High Troll in attracting new talent, but also developing current talent within our company, or incumbents as we call them. So we started with that, and that actually just building the case internally, and then starting to connect with our local partners and get feedback from Lonnie and his team on how to take next steps. I think getting the buy-in from your leadership on the front end can kind of open you up to, I know some of you are probably CEO of your own company, but for me, in a bigger organization with around 1,300 employees, we have a lot of things going on and in the mix. So yeah, that's where sort of how I got it started.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because in some ways, I hope everybody identifies that meeting that I recall, the second one, had both the local training provider, ASU Newport. It had James Morgan, the fellow local workforce board director in Northeast Arkansas, in attendance. I think even some of his team. And then you had HR, and you had hiring managers and the VP of engineering. And, you know, that's what I stress for a larger company. Getting all those players in the room is really important. Everybody hears the same message at the same time. Now, for smaller companies, it doesn't take that many, but it's still helpful to think about all those pieces of the model. Now, interesting, you said that everybody there kind of had a recollection of apprenticeship as like electricians and welders and so forth. So my next question is for Brian. You know, Brian, with your background and thinking about really what I call very rigorous type of training curriculum and things that are important for the apprenticeship schools that you had worked for and with, tell us a little bit about what Multicraft is doing today that continues to kind of expand in that space the success of apprenticeship. So, Brian?
Yes, so we've made an effort for us since I've come on board to make sure our communication plan with each of the institutions is, I'd like to call it definitely more sound than it has been in the past. But to make sure our communication plan is intact, so that we know what's going on with the programs that are at the NWAC, NTI, at ACE, and have a single point of contact with our learning and development team and our HR team, so that from the start of the individual's employment and their onboarding process, we are all in concert with one another, communicating what it is that how we're going to set this person up for success in going, hey, if they're going to the plumbing, an HVAC, or if they're going to electrician, to any of the local apprenticeship programs that we have here, making sure the documentation is there, making sure they're prepared to provide any documentation. The forms we walk through the forms with the individual. And we constantly keep the grades of that person going as well, because of how much we sponsor the individual's education. So multi-craft pays for as long as our policy, as long as the individual is passes their first semester, we sponsor the remaining of the education. Otherwise, if they don't, then they come back on. There goes through like a deduction type thing, but of $25, and that's how we there's an investment on both sides. There's what we put forth, and then what the employee is going into as far as what they're making sure they're held accountable as well. It's their education plan. It's their livelihood as well, and obviously for us, we want to do everything we can to invest in that person.
Thank you, Brian. For everybody out here, we don't have a testimonial group of apprentices on the call. We've done that in the past, but think about for a minute the fact that this win-win situation is exactly what Brian described. Employers know what they need and they're looking to find it, but these candidates aren't sure exactly what all these possibilities are. But when they know there's going to be this coupling of education, training, and opportunity, and that all they have to do is show up and they have to deliver, then all of a sudden that's things that might not have been on their radar screen when they were looking at job postings and saying, oh, they're looking for somebody with 3 to 5 years experience. That's not me. All of a sudden we've created this great potential. Patti, this next question's for you. Because of the fact that you're working with multiple employers and so forth, and you have acted much like we would expect all the other locals, and some have, to be kind of this fiscal agent and this sub-award grantee of Mark and the ADWS discretionary grant funding. Talk about that role a little bit, and how you see that playing into an important aspect of this, which is providing funding. For what purpose, how much, what pieces? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I'll say, one of our primary goals would be to apply for the funding that Mark has and receiving that. And but then we also have the responsibility of working with those participants that we have contact with, and trying to get them pre-screened maybe for the apprenticeship program. Our career advisors work with them very closely. They know the ones that could be successful, that kind of stuff as well. But also work with any employers that we have to kind of identify those that might be interested in apprenticeship. And so we wear lots of hats. We also work with our training providers to make sure that the training is appropriate, et cetera. But the main thing is obviously the funding. So we have been able to get some grants, and most of ours have been about $1,500 per participant. I think the one that the IT apprenticeship grant that we have with ACDS, or we have it with ADWS, but you are the sponsor, is the one that has taken a lot of partners and put them together to help offset the cost of things. So it's Office of Skills Development, it's ACDS, it's us through DWS, and I think the Northwest Arkansas Council. So there's multiple partners in that one that have come together to help offset some of the costs. And then some of the grants that we have, like with AHA Interpreting, it's a smaller amount, and I think it's just us helping with that. But then we also have we have a wide variety of apprenticeships that we have right now. We have your traditional plumbers and electricians, but we have a CNA Plus grant. We have Ileana's bilingual administrative assistant. We have a baker grant for 3 people. We have the IT apprenticeship and then the pre-apprenticeship grant with IT. So lots of different people wear lots of different hats. Some of those are the apprenticeship sponsor only. And then there's a different training provider and there's a different employer. Some are all 3. Ileana is all 3. And then with the IT one, there's a cohort of employers. So ACDS is the apprenticeship sponsor and UA Global is the training provider, but then there's this big cohort of employers. One of our goals at Northwest is to work with the apprenticeship sponsor and go with them to visit with the businesses when they're looking for those employers to partner with, and make sure they understand our role in all of this and the type of funding that we can get and to help with.
Patti, I think you hit on a number of things that I hope everybody took notes there and recognized that was important. You also communicated about pre-apprentice, the concept of where does that fit? And I think there's a clarification that I always like to provide, and that is that really any program, whether that be an educational classroom, online experience, it could be a work-based learning, work experience related opportunity, it could be an internship. Those things are all what we classify as pre-apprentice, and pre-apprentice programs can get funded as long as they're connected to a registered apprenticeship program. And so in the case here, what we're doing on those online courses in Northwest Arkansas is that those are all IT related, and they lead to either a software developer or a cybersecurity or data analyst type occupational apprenticeship. The same can be done and is probably very similar to manufacturing. Natalie won't speak to this specifically, but in the Fort Smith area, you've got the Future Fit program for manufacturers that's being expanded across the state. And a lot of that education, for everybody's awareness, is a perfect lead-in as a pre-apprentice program to potentially apprenticeship hiring and apprenticeship programs. They go hand in glove, and that's a very important thing I want people to recognize. The other thing you introduced that I'd like to pass this to Natalie, because I think you're a great example, is that an apprenticeship is not just for a new hire. An apprenticeship can be available to incumbent workers. And so Natalie, you've had to think about that in terms of both how you would add new talent to the organization and how you might provide opportunity from candidates from within. Please share with us about that.
Sure. So we have a large production workforce on our manufacturing floor, and some of those jobs do require high skills, whether it's welding or CNC operators. Our assembly area where people assemble the conveyor system, it's actually highly technical and it requires a high mechanical aptitude. So we have a large talent pool of people who may have worked out on the shop floor for a long time. They've maybe even worked in assembly for a couple of years, but they're tired of working out on the shop floor and they want something more, maybe a little more, they want to be up in the front office and doing more engineering type work. And a lot of those people are actually very highly equipped for our engineering or CAD technician positions. Some of them are also really equipped for our maintenance technician positions. We have a controls team that does a lot of our controls for PLC programming and things like that for our systems. And that's also a highly technical kind of mechanical, electrical area that we struggle to recruit talent to. And so one of our best strategies has really been, we already have quite a few examples here at High Troll where people have moved from those positions, starting out as an entry-level worker in production, and they've moved up the ranks into more of an engineering type position or a technician position, maintenance technician. And so we have tons of opportunities, and that's why we focus a lot or first on our incumbents, because we have quite a few that may have applied for a position. Say, for example, we opened up a CAD technician position we had a number of internal candidates apply, but they didn't meet the basic requirements because the way we built that position was based on our current engineering staff who were in those positions. And so we realized that a number of those people were turned away from applying for the job, or interviewing for that job. And we really missed out on that talent. And so we want to find a way to develop that talent and move them into those positions. And so an apprenticeship is a perfect model to do that, and it's not just, we're going to place you in this role and then, hope you get the training you need, because that's been kind of, most companies, it's kind of what you do. You throw people in and you hope that they can learn the job as quickly as possible. The apprenticeship model has really given us this, let us step back and structure, a highly organized program with other resources and inputs from the education partner, and ACDS and some of the other partners and resources we have to really equip them to do well in that position. And in addition to that, hopefully achieve a technical certificate, or maybe even an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. Some of our shop floor employees have said, I want to get an engineering degree. And so we want to encourage them to pursue that education in tandem with growing their career.
Natalie, that's great. Couldn't have said that any better in terms of this idea. I want every employer on here to think about their current workforce and who might be sitting there with an ability to move over, and given the apprenticeship concept that they could be trained to do well. What a great morale builder within a company. What a way to stress the fact that there is career paths. Another company we've worked with in Northwest Arkansas, Simmons Foods, has taken some people off the plant floor and they're coming into their IT QA junior developer program, right? And so we like that fact. Now, one of the questions that already has come in from our audience via chat, and I want to encourage others to do this as well, is on the return on investment question. And so I'm going to take the liberty of routing this to Brian from a return on investment in a traditional model with the trades and construction. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about one other example that I think might additionally drive home some thoughts for executives out there about the return on investment question. But Brian, I'm going to pass that one to you right now. Are you still there?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so is this in regards to, I want to make sure I'm looking at this question right, from a learning and development, or what?
Well, kind of as an employer, multi-craft, investing in an apprentice, right, over the short term and long term, how have you and others like you proven the fact that apprenticeship has a tremendous return on investment?
Right, so for us, because we have the various skill sets here and divisions that kind of move around in various parts of the industry, getting them immediately into, number one, registered, getting into the actually the pipeline for apprenticeship, and then making sure that the return on investment works best for us when we can utilize what's being taught in the classroom and transfer it immediately into what their day-to-day, what they're going to see on the day-to-day operations of the taskings that's going on, and to already start equipping them immediately with those skill sets, because for some there is the year one or year two where that transfer of information really isn't getting to the field. So we have our multi-craft way of developing the individual to couple what's being taught in the classroom, so that individual can be an asset to the foreman, to the project manager, and to the estimator, and overall to the division manager in the company, of what they're bringing to the table, and how we can make sure that they are valuable, number one, and they're being utilized to their full capacity and getting that untapped potential. So we are seeing further and further development there. We are increasing the education plans for them with another program we're going to be bringing online here this fall. So we're excited about how we can further develop our people much faster, so that they can take over positions, so they're in preparation to be a true journeyman, and then going on to be an even better foreman.
That's great, Brian. I would only add one thing that I'll bet you would nod your head to as well, and that is that whenever retention goes up, then the ROI goes up as well. Because one of the things we hate to think occurs, and I'll just use information technology as an example, is a lot of employers who know that it's an in-demand occupation. People come in, they get trained, and then the question is, well, what happens when they leave, right? And so the idea, though, of somebody not necessarily feeling entitled with a 4-year degree to move around, we find, and I think the numbers are staggering. Randy can probably attest to this: 84% across the board of retention in apprenticeships, where that loyalty is created because somebody got a chance that they otherwise would never have had. And I think that means a lot. The also piece to return on investment is this idea that starting somebody at slightly lesser wage, but getting them productive as quickly as possible. And then you have to couple in the idea that Mark and Cody and ACDS and Patti has commented about other sources. This idea of being able to get this training done at potentially zero cost or at very low cost, that's a cost of doing business. And being able to take advantage of the funding that's available right now needs to be something that every employer looks at and thinks seriously about. Why would I pass that up? It may not be here forever, kind of thing. Additionally, on the ROI question, Carl, you kind of alluded to it in your opening comments. Do you want to reflect at DXC about what you have believed to be this return on investment on productivity and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you got to be aware of, because a lot of companies burn through a lot of dollars to get a new employee up and running and being productive. And if you don't track that, you tend to lose where that dollar is going. So with the apprenticeship, this allows us to take that time of onboarding and getting access to systems and doing all of these things. They can also train on how to do the work the DXC way. And that has paid off a long run. And then plus, in the apprenticeship, we can bring in a lower level developer, train them in this 8-week class, and they can come out and almost be in the next level in productivity, right? So therefore, the account's got a value from that, because now here's a person that's trained, know how to do Unix and all this technical stuff the DXC way. They're not a new person coming on the account. They already have 8 weeks of knowledge and experience, or even more, in that training program.
Yeah. And so whether it's in IT, Carl, thank you for that, or in really anything, we have used a term, and I think we're getting near to the end, so I want to make sure we keep opening the door to more questions here. But one other thing that I'm going to pass on to Ileana is the fact that there are a lot of you out here that are probably doing something similar to an apprenticeship. You're just not calling it that. You probably are finding innovative ways to find candidates. You're bringing them in, and as Carl said, you have to show them the DXC way, the AHA interpreting way, the whatever the company name is, Walmart, Tyson, Blue Cross, doesn't matter. And so if you're already doing that, that's somewhat an apprenticeship program already, and you may as well consider taking advantage, whether you're doing internal training, you're paying an external vendor, or you're sending them through a dual credentialed program at a local community college or what have you. Those funds are available to help offset those training costs. So please consider that. I think that's some of the things you found, right? You were already a training provider, Ileana. You were already an employer, and yet you weren't taking advantage of the apprenticeship program. So how has that now really just accentuated your delivery and your program?
Well, I'll be honest with you guys. I mean, the first time that I met with Lonnie and the team, I had to really make sure that we were going to be a good fit. I mean, we fit in the module, we were training, we were using Indeed. We had about 157 plus contract people working for us last year. And today we invested, like I mentioned, with 5 apprentices in the beginning and have brought in about 7 more just about a week ago. And they are probably one of the best investments that we have had so far in all of my hiring experience. And that goes from me even working under a hospital administration team as well. The the payoff, I mean, to have someone who is honest with you and loyal and taking in all of the professional training for you to be able to really focus on what you need from them for your business, but at the same time know that you're contributing to their professional skills is more of a payoff than any financial revenues that might be created because we've decided to be on the apprenticeship program. It has opened up, a lot of doors other than just the apprenticeship program. We are now registered with the Arkansas Higher Education. We are now a registered entity for the Arkansas Training Providers List, which allows us to really encourage anyone who is an employer or a trainer to take advantage of our unique training that we focus on all of our training, mostly for our bilingual community out there. So for us, we have been able, like I said, the first group alone has done so much more than what any of our 157 plus contractors have done. And we've been in business for 5 years. Our home base is in Bentonville, Arkansas. And our employee base has been spread all over the US. Really no different from what we have currently. Most of our apprentices, of course, are locally based in Arkansas, but because of the pandemic and everyone impacted from the coronavirus, we actually have allowed out-of-state individuals to apply for our training program. So that's huge excitement in the sense of our ability to expand our knowledge and give other people opportunity to be allowed for them to grow personally and professionally as well.
That's just a great testimony, Ileana. We do have a question now from our audience. It's from Patrick Irvin. It's related to, the fact that I'm going to pass this to Brian, because Brian, with some of your trades and construction apprenticeships, they run a number of years. They're longer term, and sometimes these apprentices are sometimes on their own as contractors and move around. But the question is, how do you deal with kind of some milestones or some ways to recognize accomplishment, along the way, right? Things that are part of the journey, but it's a longer journey. So can you address that for us, Brian?
Absolutely. So because of the various divisions that we have and their capacities, we put a lot of that into the divisional's responsibilities, division manager's responsibilities. So some of them in regards to each year that progresses, number one, first and foremost, they are they're sponsored through the program, so that's a huge thing for them. And just a reminder to keep them encouraged, and because there is so much the work that they accomplish throughout the day, and then they attend school at night. Another one is anytime that there is a prior to pre-COVID, there was the graduations or the ceremonies they had. We had division managers that would show up and in some area give them a gift card or give them something in appreciation from the division. And obviously welcoming them back in as hey, you're about to become a journeyman. So some of those areas as well, looking to the future of what we're looking to do as well in some of our areas of employee really engagement and these milestones is putting on something here at Multicraft so that we can celebrate those that are in the program, the apprenticeship program. So each year that they go through, we'll acknowledge that during that apprenticeship week, National Apprenticeship Week, and then those who have graduated from the program, then also acknowledge them in their transitioning into a senior role within the apprenticeship pipeline and becoming now recognized as a journeyman. So there's always something the division managers are there for, to give them, to encourage them, and to promote them during their time of being in the pipeline.
That's great, Brian. I hope that's helping you, Patrick. I'm going to add one other piece to kind of this IT apprenticeship model, but I think it applies to some of the other non-traditional, more white collar related functions, is that whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years, and maybe not as long as the trades and construction in some cases, point being is that there's lots to celebrate for an apprenticeship journey, whether that's the completion of some of the classroom learning objectives. It's some of the things that in cohorts we bring them together because there's a camaraderie built when somebody goes through this kind of journey with others, when it's not just one person at a time, but multiples. And I think this even can relate to companies in a certain area that could do signing days when they actually initiate their programs, because it's a great marketing opportunity, but that same marketing continues. I mean, I told Natalie at Hytrol that she's going to be able to leverage the fact that they're going to be one of the first in their Northeast Arkansas area to do some of these things. And you know, it really will influence other companies, but at the same time, it's a real market advantage to be the first to say we have a fully registered apprenticeship program underway and successful. The candidates like that, and it becomes a real distinctive advantage. The other question we've got in here now is from Dr. Laura Berry at North Ark, and her question is around, you know, this pandemic, and COVID has created some unusual circumstances for all of us, and certainly for employers. And so it's going to be a tough question to route necessarily to any one of the panelists. So I'm just going to field it. I think we have heard from a number of companies that you know, they've had to put some of their what do you call it, plans on hold, and they've furloughed folks, and now they're bringing some back and maybe not all. And the kind of the way we work, because technology has afforded us the ability to figure out that we can work differently and so forth, it's going to change. But I do think that the apprenticeship model, in terms of the flip side of this, from companies who have said, hey, we're back, we're still doing things, we're in a mainstream business, they've actually grown and had to look at some of the potential unemployed population to say, hey, here's a real chance to be able to make a difference. And now over the last few weeks, I just heard today, several companies say they're going to invest huge dollars in diversity and in inclusion and equity to find more candidates, like we've talked about amongst the local boards, to have opportunities for more minorities and more underrepresented populations to have a chance, whether that be to start companies or to become apprentices, where you don't have to have that degree. Don't care if you went to college. You may not have had the money and the access, but now we're going to give you that shot. So Laura, I hope that helps, because I think it is a mixed bag in terms of the response of employers. Not everybody's in one category or another. Now let's see, we have one more question that's come in. To elaborate on pre-apprenticeships and how those are funded, actually, I won't field that one myself. I'm going to pass that to Patti, and you can talk a little bit about how we've done that, and we can add on to that, either myself or maybe even Mark could join in on responding to that. But it's about the funding of pre-apprenticeship programs. Patti,
Right.
that one's for you.
Thanks. We have the pre-apprenticeship IT program through the UA Global campus in Rogers. It's distance learning, so anybody in the state is able to take those classes. It is through the Northwest District, the funding is. And basically, these are some classes, these are some entry-level classes that students could take. I think a lot of the focus has been on recently graduated high school students who maybe aren't looking to go to a four-year college. They could take these classes and also see whether this is really for them or not. I actually had a very long conversation with my grandson, who stayed with me for a week and had to hear about this all day, every day, because he thinks he's interested in IT. And I want him to take some of these classes and so that he knows whether he can really, this is really his, what he wants to do. And then I want him to go into the apprenticeship program. So grandma's trying to push him in the right direction. So the funds that we have, average of $300 per participant. A lot of the classes that are available out there, that's the cost of those classes. Some are a little higher, so we have a little bit of flexibility through that. Again, the goal for the IT pre-apprenticeship would be that they understand that this is the profession they want to go into, and then that gives them kind of a leg up for application to the apprenticeship program. So it proves to ACDS that they have the aptitude and the attitude that's needed for them to be able to go into that apprenticeship program. Does that answer your question, you think?
I think that helps a lot. Hopefully, Kim, you were the one with the question. Hopefully that's helping. There is a question that says, what about, launching programs, outside of IT? And I think we can field that by saying, when it says early childhood education programs, I think pre-apprentice probably can start in a number of places, maybe not early childhood, but certainly middle school when kids are starting to identify with career pathways, that I think some of the work-based learning and a lot of where schools are moving toward experiential and project-based things. Kim, I would say that we're working together in this kind of ecosystem to find where groups and organizations have put forth some effort, whether it's with mentors, volunteers coming back in from industry, even plants and manufacturers, getting together to form programs to reach these students at an early stage, both from a interest and marketing perspective, as well as just making sure they understand what the opportunities that lay before them in terms of so many vast occupations that might not have been thought of in terms of apprenticeship. So gang, we'll just, go ahead, Patty.
I'm sorry. Well, I was just noticing she's talking about training early childhood educators. So that's a very out of the box thinking of having an apprenticeship for people to become an educator in early childhood. So that's something that would be interesting to see. And again, I kind of wanted to say earlier too, one of the other programs that we've worked with is with North Arkansas College, and they're working on a turf management apprenticeship. So this would be for golf courses, baseball fields, parks and rec, those kinds of things. And so we've partnered with them and been able to connect them with you and with Mark to make sure that they have their I's dotted and T's crossed. And we're looking forward to getting that one started. So that's another role of the workforce board,
yes,
the workforce team.
And since we're at 5 o'clock, I don't want to go past, because this is late in the day and we've really appreciated that you've stayed with us for an hour and a half. We have a few closing slides, but I will take Kim's question to use as the example. So here's the approach that we've asked you to consider. What's your next step? And that next step could be, let's delve into the details of what it would look like for pre-childhood education, or childhood education and teachers. If you're in another area where you're thinking about an occupation that hadn't been discussed before, think about this next step and how you would do that, and communicate with your local workforce board rep that invited you. Mark, I'm going to turn it back over to you to kind of close this out, but I want to have everybody thank our panelists, if we could, and I know we can sort of have everybody off mute, or maybe it's just me, but we're going to give them a hand for their participation today. We really appreciate that. And thanks for all your kind comments that many of you have submitted on the chat. Mark, back to you. Let's close this out. And thanks again for everybody. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Lonnie, and thank you to all of our panelists. Angela, as I kind of make just a few closing comments, if you don't mind, I think we have a slide that, yeah, there you go, that has some of our contact information for Don Hamby and Rocky in the State Apprenticeship Office, as well as Randy Prather, our DOL State Director, Office of Apprenticeship. So those are names that you need to kind of take down and know, and many of you probably know these folks already. Also, Angela, there's a slide that lists some resources. Thank you. Apprenticeship.gov was mentioned early on. That's an excellent resource to go to and learn a little bit more about apprenticeship. There's also just a host of information and different links that we've shared. There's only a few that we're representing on this particular slide, but just know there's a lot of information that you could read up on about registered apprenticeship, and just know that you have a lot of resources in the state in terms of ourselves at DWS, the Office of Skills Development, Lonnie, the State Office of Apprenticeship folks, and also Randy Prather are glad to assist in many of your questions and hope to partner with you. So I want to thank everyone for their attendance today, local board staff and partners. I hope you take away some key points that were made today in our discussion. Know that, we're trying to move the registered apprenticeship model forward in the state. I think it makes a lot of sense for our employers in terms of their workforce development challenges that they face, and there's some resources to help you with that, funding and expertise. So thanks everyone, and we look forward to working with you in the future on registered apprenticeship expansion in Arkansas. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great meeting.